Hello, my name is Amanda Norris. You might know me as Penelope Crystal Fink because I'm a writer and I've been using that name as my pen name for some time now. I am making this video to talk about a few points that have occurred to me since I posted a letter about my ex-husband, who is also a writer, on Medium. The letter was addressed to the editor of The Atlantic, a man named Jeffrey Goldberg, and it is no longer available on Medium. I will find a new home for it. But I just wanted to make a video in the grand tradition of a millennial doubling down. Okay. If you're hoping that I'm going to come across as crazy, I hope I don't satisfy that expectation because, frankly, people want to know, am I batshit crazy? Actually, that's not what people want to know. People have already decided. People already decided that I'm batshit crazy. So what to do about that? I want to talk about my pen name just briefly. I created this pen name for 4 reasons. Number 1, I was a reporter, and it's not a good idea if you are seeking work as a journalist to have writing out there that might expose your personal life or political biases. So I didn't want people, when I started getting short stories published, to read them, infer something about me and not hire me again. Okay, so number 2, I had to hide. Or number 1, I had to hide for professional reasons. Number 2, my ex-husband is famous. He is a writer. His name is Kevin Williamson. And he wants to run for office someday. I figured that sooner or later, someone would approach me and ask me what it was like to be married to him, and I would have to tell them the truth, which is that it was frightening and it was horrible because he's a misogynist. And I found that very early on, shit got really real for us, particularly after 9/11, when what I thought was a social conservative bent based on his Catholicism blew up into what I would say is just general hostility towards people of other races and a demeaning, scary mentality of white male superiority. So that was the first time I tried to leave him, and he threatened to kill me. And that's what the letter is about. I don't think a person who does that to a woman should be awarded with a career where he's basically a moral authority figure. All pundits want to be moral authority figures. They are failed preachers, and preachers are failed saints. Okay, they do what they do because on some level they can't face the music of themselves. They can't live up to the truth. Okay, so my ex-husband is famous, and I thought, if there's a record of us being married out there, and I want to be a writer too, and I don't want to have to address that with people, and I don't want editors to think I'm contagious and toxic because I was once associated with this right-winger, maybe I should adopt a pen name. So that's what I did. The third reason is just that my name, my real name, Amanda Norris, is a pretty common name. So for marketing purposes, if you Google Amanda Norris, you're going to come up with a bunch of people who aren't me. So it was more expedient to come up with a name, Penelope Crystal Fink, because no one else had it. So it had to be original, and it worked. Okay. This is the Distal Fink flag. It's what inspired the name Crystal Fink. It is a Pennsylvania Dutch design, and it symbolizes smooth sailing over troubled waters, which I thought was a nice thing to invoke when I was thinking about becoming a writer. The other thing that I don't like about my name, Penelope, is that in the Odyssey, Penelope survives because she is a woman who outwits the warring, idiotic, depraved thugs who are the men in her life. Okay? And how does she do that? She does that by deceiving them. She does that by weaving a tapestry because she's being courted by all these assholes and she doesn't want any part of it. So she tells them that she'll get married when she finishes the tapestry, and then at night she goes back in and she pulls down everything that she's done. And frankly, I don't like that I invoked that. I feel like that has a little bit of a power over me because now I'm having to go, oh my God, do I need to keep this up? Because all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose for me. And it's kind of demoralizing to know that at that point in my writing career, no one had really talked about any of the work that I'd actually done, either in creative writing or in journalism. The thing that I'm now most famous for is having a famous ex-husband. It's a dilemma. It's a problem. It sucks. What I do is I tell people socially, because when you go out and you date people and you swap your life stories, people are like, well, do you have any kids with him? And I'm like, no, thank God. But this is what I have instead. Okay. So I feel like his being famous is kind of like, I think I got off easy from listening to my friends with kids and the divorce, like, because I don't really have to deal with him. I really don't. I can choose to engage or not engage, but it's mostly all happening online. So I think I'm blessed, and I think in that respect it's very nice. But anyway, back to what you all really want to know, what you want to get out of this video, or what you're telling yourself you want to get is she going to say something that makes her sound as batshit crazy as she did in the letter? Because you've already made up your mind, No, I'm not. I hope I'm not going to do that. I did have to sit down and say, well, how to address this and why use video? I don't know. I felt like video was a big risk because I'd be like doubling down on the is she crazy? Because I don't always come across very well in video, and I know that. But what I really want to talk about is mental illness and the way that the is she batshit crazy has been leveled against me. And if you take nothing more away from this video and don't listen anymore, what I want you to understand is that I cannot tell you whether or not I am batshit crazy or mentally ill. And that's because mental illness is a paradox. Okay? It is an infuriating paradox. Because if you were to ask me, do you have kidney disease? Are you HIV positive? Are you pregnant? Do you have cancer? Does anyone in your family have a history of cancer? You see, those are questions about illness that, if I lie to you or don't lie to you, can be independently verified. We can resort to a third party. We can't do that with mental illness. You know why? Because it's a social construct. Therefore, I can't tell you that because I don't get to. That's not available to me. I don't have the agency to do that because the society I live in has created the construct. And there are designated people that we call professionals whom the rest of you may or may not give credence or authority to decide that. But ultimately, I don't get to decide, right? I was just kind of shocked at the level of stigma and really disgusting behavior that went on with she is mentally ill and she needs to take her meds and shut the fuck up. Because what happened when I published the letter was that I became a target of alt-right misogynists who took me to be representative of the things that they're unhappy with without grounding that in any way, shape, or form in the letter or in the facts of my life. Okay? So just because I guess it was a takedown of someone that they're comfortable with, which is my ex-husband, I somehow got in the way, right? I somehow opened myself up to it, and I knew that I would, okay? So hopefully in this video, what you'll get, if you're interested, is facts. Facts. There will be facts about me, my life history, my marriage, my ex-husband, my mental illness, and events that really happened. So let's start, first of all, with facts and what they mean today. People say, I don't think that we talk about mental illness enough, and that's why so many people have problems with it, and there wouldn't be this much stigma if we could all just be open and talk about. This is bullshit, okay? We do talk about mental illness. We talk about it ad nauseum. People who don't deal with science talk about it. Okay? People who don't have any education in psychology feel qualified to talk about others and their mental illnesses in a way that doesn't help people at all. Because personally, in my life, I've been diagnosed with so many different mental illnesses, including, borderline personality disorder, anorexia nervosa with purging, major depression, bipolar disorder, adjustment disorder, okay, and finally, the diagnosis du jour, which is PTSD, okay, so there we go. That's the full fucking scoop. There you go. Eat it up. Okay, so let's address what happened to me. I was abused as a child. And it took me until I was 34 years old to say out loud that regardless of all of these diagnoses, okay, I have diagnosis fatigue. The reason why I finally was able to say, no, I am not mentally ill. I am a child abuse survivor, is because the diagnoses became so many that the people diagnosing me lost credibility. You cannot convince me that my brain is so diseased that I have no one is that mentally ill That would be like somebody having Parkinson's, MS, cancer, Alzheimer's, and schizophrenia all at the same fucking time. That's not what happens. Okay, what happens is that incredibly vulnerable people, especially young people, whose families are abusing them or are otherwise incapable of raising a child in a way that makes that child socially functional and well-adjusted, are captured by this industry of pill-pushing, greedy, pseudoscientific hacks, who then turn around and discredit the abuse victim and tell them that everything will be fine if they take a fucking pill because they know they can get money from the family. Okay, so let's talk about my family, my childhood, my background. All right, the first thing I remember in this life was my dad beating the shit out of my mom. He beat her so badly when I was 20 months old that there was blood coming down her face. And he did this after a Christmas party in which my mom allegedly flirted with some other guy. They were both shit drunk, okay? They were shit-faced drunk. They spilled beer on me and my toys in the car. And then they proceeded to have this violent fight on the lawn. Somehow we all made it into the house. And I was so frightened that I went in a back room and I hid, and my dad was beating my mom in the living room. And I remembered this all as a bad dream. And this is really common, but I remembered this all as a bad dream. I remembered everything everyone said and everything everyone was wearing, which was really freaky for people. But this kind of memory with trauma is called a flashbulb memory. And for years I thought, I feel so bad because I'm having a memory about a nightmare that I had about my folks. And what a bad child am I? I had a lot of guilt because I thought I must be a really bad kid to think that my parents would act like this. But the memory was so real that by the time that I was about 11, I knew I wasn't remembering a bad dream. I knew I was remembering something that happened. And when I was 13, I told my mom about my memory. And she said, Amanda, that was December 21st, 1983. And she was shocked because I guess that was like the last big blowout that they had before she left the house. And I think the cops were called. So she always remembered the date. Now, I was 20 months old, and one of the things about that memory is that as young as I was, I knew that something terrible was happening, and I was afraid that my dad was going to kill my mom. And I was cold because in their fighting, they left the door open, and the cold air was coming in, and I remember standing there in my coat because nobody was really paying attention to where the fuck I was, right? And I was still in my outside clothes, like my coat, and I was literally wondering if I should go outside the house and try to find another adult and get help for my mom. But I think what happened was I just went into shock and sort of passed out because I don't remember the cops coming and I don't remember anything before a certain point. it's very finite, this memory, okay? Later in my life, I would say from the time that I was from the time that I was born until the time that I was 7, there were two adults that I had regular contact with outside of school who were not violent and not addicted to drugs or alcohol. There were only 2 people in my regular system of care. One was my Japanese nanny who was hired by my grandparents on my dad's side because, as she put it, she was hired, I found out, when I was 3 months old. And what she has told me is that she was hired by my grandparents because my grandparents saw the way my parents were behaving and they didn't think that they were capable of taking care of me. Now, my grandparents on that side were themselves violent alcoholics, but they were also old, and they just could, my grandmother on that side, she couldn't be bothered to do all of this daily care, so she hired a housekeeper. And the other person was my maternal grandmother, who herself was a really righteous and really smart woman, but kind of cold and distant at times. So outside of those two people, everyone else had a severe problem with alcoholism and was prone to hitting people, throwing shit, driving drunk, my dad was smoking weed a lot at points. My mom was on all kinds of psychiatric drugs. My mom was abusing Xanax and benzos, and my mom was also incredibly, very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive of me. Some people think that she was physically abusive of me when I was an infant. So, my mom would tell me things that she told me, for example, that she loved the dogs and cats more than me because they couldn't talk back. When I was 16, my mom decided that she would try to get back at me for moving in with my dad because that's what I did to escape the verbal abuse, by attempting to kill herself. And she called me after she had drunk a bottle of wine and taken a whole bottle of Xanax and said that I was such a nasty, stupid, little rotten, spoiled bitch that she was going to blow her brains out unless I came to the house and I don't know what. My mom never had an adult friend, ever. Throughout my entire childhood, there was not a single friend. I was supposed to be everything to her. And she repeatedly pumped me up with this, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then in the next hour, would say such terrible things to me that I didn't know. I was either a spoiled little bitch, or I was this wonderful little savior figure. It was really disgusting, okay? It's a really disgusting thing to do to your kid. It's a disgusting thing to do to your kid. And it made me realize why I later had problems with psychosis. Because really, the root of all mental illness is narcissism. When you can't see past yourself and you don't have a really stable, fixed self-perception, it will literally warp how you see reality. Okay? And so I think that later, all of the abuse and all of the trauma cracked me open so that I could put myself back together again. And I think that's what I have done. And if you don't think that's possible, well, that's fine. If you have good enough karma that you have never had to go through any of this, more power to you. I'm not going to get in your way, but I'm not going to lie to you either. Okay, so am I mentally ill? Let's talk about where I'm at with that. I don't take medication. My prevailing diagnosis, all of these diagnoses have been scrapped, and I currently receive treatment for PTSD. Okay, what this entails in terms of symptoms is that sometimes I have nightmares, I have insomnia. I have insomnia every 3 or 4 years, it'll get really bad. I go to therapy. My last psychiatrist talked about my previous bipolar disorder, and she said basically what we're thinking now is that all bipolar disorder is a form of PTSD, which came as a great relief to me because it seemed like an ethical reform was going on in the industry. I've met about 6 or 7 different women and known them very well, and they were all diagnosed. They were roughly my age, and they were all diagnosed with bipolar disorder at roughly the same time. Any psychiatrist will validate this. They'll tell you that there was an epidemic of bipolar disorder among women in the late 90s. Well, I kept meeting these women and bonding with them. And it turns out that what we had in common was that we had all been abused sexually or physically before the onset of our symptoms. I mean, raped, molested, sodomized, attacked, mostly by family or like in some cases strangers, but mostly by family and like a boyfriend or an intimate partner. So it appears to me in hindsight that what was going on was that there were some people who were manifesting post-traumatic symptoms in ways that got coded, and they got miscoded. Okay, so I mean, it's really fucking frightening, the dimensions, the social injustice dimensions that can happen. Okay, and I longed for a diagnosis. I'm not gonna lie, I longed for a diagnosis of PTSD from the time that I started seeking treatment. Okay, when I was 16, I put myself in the hospital because it was an option. Running away wasn't an option. I knew that I wasn't going to make it in the world, and I really loved school, and I wanted to do well in school, and I really wanted to run away. I had spent the majority of my childhood wishing that I could be remanded to state custody, and nobody ever stuck up for me, and nobody ever protected me because my grandparents had money, and I was a pretty well-groomed child. That's the truth. Okay, I grew up on both sides of the tracks. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm so sensitive to class issues and why I tend to view class as that is the lens through which I view a lot of social and political phenomenon, class. I even have a theory. I'm writing a book about mass shooters currently, and I have a theory that I'm floating that a lot of alt-right misogyny is actually class angst in disguise. It is first of all, misogyny is the gateway drug for right-wingers. So it's really easy to like trigger and capture male insecurity. And then once you have that audience, to take it other places, okay? A lot of men think that they have it like really rough right now. A lot of white men think they have it rough, okay? They are deeply aggrieved, these people. It is an entire fucking pity party, okay? I mean, pity party, okay? And if you want to get like deeper into that, I just want to talk about the people, some of the people who have come out against me. Some of these people have a couple of things in common with my ex-husband, but watching this sort of like takedown video of, this is that was Kevin Michael Grace, and this is Luke Ford, and together they put together this segment on Luke Ford live streams, which is the YouTube channel that this man named Luke Ford runs, I guess, where he interviews people like Richard Spencer and just, I don't even know. It's just a lot, okay? I was accused of being rambling and, dear God, hours-long videos of bullshit. I mean, bullshit by these cunt-ass losers. Yeah, I said that. I said, I got desensitized in the islands, in the Virgin Islands. It's like old MacDonald had a farm. Here a cunt, there a cunt, everyone's a cunt. Okay, so sorry. But I just can't help but point out, like, I was like, if I do a rebuttal to this, it's almost not a fair fight. Kevin Michael Grace and Luke Ford call themselves journalists, where they've never really done any reporting, and they're both college dropouts. Luke Ford is not a moral leader. Luke Ford is a former pornography gossip columnist who's been sued according to Wikipedia. I don't know, I haven't verified it. But his Wikipedia page says that he's been sued 5 times for defamation. And he himself, well, first of all, I read in his Wikipedia page that he's been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. So I was like, well, how far to go with this? Because that's really hypocritical of me. I mean, I thought, dear God, how did his diagnoses end up in his Wikipedia page? And I was like, because he must have outed himself. And he outed himself in these bizarre videos. He's a convert to Judaism. He's been kicked out of synagogues for gossip writing, and this just appears to be a pattern of behavior with him that, unfortunately, in my opinion, epitomizes what's wrong with new media and the detrimental effect that new and alt media has had on our political discourse in this country. And there was a moment in watching this video about me and about my letter when I had a twinge of solidarity for my alt-right psychopath ex-husband, okay? Because in it, both of us are referred to as low functioning. Kevin and I are low functioning losers, according to these college dropouts who've never done a lick of reporting. And at least one of them, that Save Our Boomer, that's Kevin Michael Grace's GoFundMe page, because guess what? They're not making enough money from doing the YouTube shit that they do. So Kevin Michael Grace apparently was on the verge of homelessness. And I read that. I've been on the verge of homelessness. I lived in a boarding house for 3 years. Okay? Because investigative reporting did not pay. And I left the industry and I went back to waiting tables. Okay? It was a downward spiral for me. And I read this GoFundMe page and I was like, well, I don't know. Have you tried working a job? I mean, I was like, is this a fair fight, Amanda? Is this a fair fight? Here's this thing about me. You can say that I'm mentally ill or batshit crazy. But here's my resume in brief. Okay, I graduated summa cum laude from college. I worked for 2 daily newspapers. I was fired from neither. I did investigative reporting on drug trafficking in the Virgin Islands. I went back to school for international relations. I was accepted into the 8th ranked university for that in our country. It's called American University. I did 2 semesters worth of coursework before I determined that the program was a bit out of my price range. I have a 4.0 GPA, should I wish to continue. I was given a scholarship to Fairfield University's MFA program, walked away from that, and I was given a full scholarship to Rutgers Camden, their MFA program, and declined to do that because I didn't want to live on $17,000 a year and be a TA, especially after having published a novel and having gotten my work published in about 10 literary journals, okay? So say what you will about my medication regimen, which is nothing at this point. Say what you will about my being hospitalized, but low functioning is a stretch, especially when you consider the source. That's all I'm saying. Low functioning. I'm low functioning, okay? These people are college dropouts who give themselves the moniker of journalists. Journalist? You're a journalist? You're a journalist? Excuse me? You're a fucking freak. You're a slime bag. You're a cunt-ass loser and a jackal, okay? I'm not having it, okay? So the other convenient thing about calling me batshit crazy is that you actually never have to dispute a single thing that I say. It's a smear and a slur. It's designed to be like a snowball thing. It's designed to pick up momentum on social media channels, and then lo and behold, nothing ever gets discussed. Nothing ever gets discussed. In this truly disgusting takedown of me, there are some things that got discussed that were just flat out wrong. Okay, so for example, in the letter I talked about being sexually assaulted by my roommate, which happened actually when I was dating Kevin for the last time. And I did that because I was anticipating that all this blowback from all of these freaks and all these critics, I was giving them more credit than I really should have. Was I thought, if you're going to go after somebody as famous as your ex-husband, you know, people are going to go digging into your background. They're going to want to know, does she have a history of filing complaints against men, and are they baseless? No, the answer is no. So in the letter, I put it out there. Yeah, I was sexually assaulted by my roommate. He was a black man. He was from Haiti. It still happened, okay? I don't know where people get off calling me racist for mentioning the identity of this man, but he was not a dreamer, okay? He was not a dreamer. He was a citizen. I think he supplied me with a social security card. I don't know if it was fake. He had a driver's license. He was not a dreamer. The idea that you can go on social media and speculate and then call yourself a journalist when speculation is actually anathema to reporting, and reporters are journalists, okay? Everyone else is a follower, okay? And reporters are truth leaders, okay? And just this nasty, disgusting lack of regard for the truth is a consequence of industry implosion with newspapers. It's a long-term consequence, and it's something that we're all having to deal with right now, okay? So, back to being mentally ill. I just want to know why you think I would in any way be able to tell you if I'm mentally ill, and why you don't see what a big trap it is for me. Because if I tell you that I'm not mentally ill, you won't believe me anyway. And if I tell you that I am, then it won't matter, because you won't have to listen to anything that I have to say about anyone or anything. Any topic that matters. And in that sense, it's the ultimate weapon. It's the stigma of it's the kryptonite of stigmas, okay? The way I see it is like it's like a grenade, okay? And I think that these people are poor fighters. They're poor strategists. Because here's the thing. If you come after me and you say she's mentally ill, and you want to pull the pin on that grenade, it's like walking into a field of people who are armed with, you know, like other forms of weapons like rifles and slingshots, but you're like, you have the grenade, right? You have the grenade. But what happens if you pull the pin and the grenade doesn't go off. And that's all you've got. You don't have anything else. You had only that. And there's no explosion. I mean, you better make sure that it works, but the only way to make sure that it works is to pull the pin. And that's kind of how I feel about people accusing me of being mentally ill. If you're gonna make it your weapon, good luck, because that pin is pulled. And I'm still here. And I'm still not batshit crazy. And I'm still writing better than you are. Okay? So just given the overall atmosphere of hatred in our country right now, other things I want you to know are that I haven't voted in 15 years. Okay? I haven't voted in 15 years. And I don't think I will vote. So coming after me because I'm representative of leftist politics is also unfactual, and coming after me because I somehow am aligned with people you don't like is very dangerous too, because I'm not really aligned with a lot of people anymore. That's the truth. 3 people who inspired me to make this video are Amy Schumer, because of all the shit that she's had to take, and she's just a brilliant comedian and a really wonderful person, in my opinion. I just have a sense from her social media that she's about as authentic as anyone's gonna get anymore. And so I was like, wow, how does she fucking deal with this bullshit? And I wish that I had her brilliant mind, and I wish that I had her, joie de vivre or whatever. Other people that inspired me were Chris Hedges, because I don't read my ex-husband, I read Chris Hedges, and I listen to what Chris Hedges has to say, because Chris Hedges has 2 things that not many people, myself and my ex-husband included, have. First of all, he's grounded in ethics. He has a background in theology, actually, okay? He is a minister. He was a minister. He went to seminary. He's just highly educated in the Christian thought tradition. I am a Christian. That's the truth. And then he went on to become a reporter in a way that, I envy. So one of the reasons why I feel like I could be open about what happened to me that resulted in my post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis is that I so admire Chris Hedges' work. And in an interview, he stopped what he was doing once and he said, I know that this subject of mine has PTSD because I have been diagnosed with it myself, and I could see some of the symptoms repeating and mirrored in this woman I was interviewing. He was interviewing a woman who was a former porn star, actually, and had done a lot of BDSM kind of violent stuff. And that really gave me pause, because I thought, oh my God, he's such a professional, and he just admitted to it. And I have a feeling that his PTSD stems directly from his wartime corresponding, where he was exposed to so much violence. I was once asked by a member of the Secret Service if my professional experience as a crime and investigative reporter, because I did have to see a lot of violence, and I did have to cover a lot of shootings and stabbings, drug trafficking results, and a lot of bloodshed, okay? And I was like, the Secret Service member wanted to know if I thought that was what had given me PTSD, and I was like, well, unfortunately, no. Because irate and corrupt politicians and drug cartel members, in my experience, they're like nothing compared to my family. I'm sorry. And I thought to myself, well, if Chris Hedges can go on the record and talk about this diagnosis and own it, I don't think I should hide anymore. And I don't think I should beat around the bush. Because Chris Hedges was blessed, I think, with a normal childhood. And he and I both did work in journalism in an attempt to get at the truth, regardless, get at the truth of what was going on. And his take on democracy, I think, is about as sober and cogent and intellectually sound as we're going to get. Now, another person, that said, who inspired me to make this video is Tucker Carlson. And you're gonna flip. I know you're gonna flip your shit because how can I be like this? It's like, this is what continuously confuses people is Tucker Carlson, I'm trying to find it, made, here it is, a monologue called Mercenary Leaders. Okay? And I have never watched Tucker Carlson. I do not watch Fox News as a habit, and I actually don't watch cable news anymore. But Tucker Carlson did this monologue. It's called Mercenary Leaders. It is brilliant. It's about 15 minutes long. And if you really want to know how I feel about politics, watch this, okay? We part ways, Tucker and I, about the potential for socialism. A lot of people think that there's this automatic slippery slope. And I acknowledge the potential for socialism to go very badly and to become communism, okay? The way that I feel is that when making a decision about who to elect, if you should choose to do that, is that you're not responsible for perpetuity, because that will lead you down a path of speculation that your human mind cannot adequately deal with. So speculating out for millennium and forever and a day, okay? People who were revolting against Tsar Nicholas and who died before Chernobyl, like decades before Chernobyl, those people are not responsible for the disastrous, genocidal, repressive, totalitarian outcomes of every single bloody fucking Russian leader that came after them. They were simply making a decision about what kind of power they wanted to award people in their society. So I am a socialist. My heart is with Bernie Sanders because socialism can go very badly. It can be very badly done. In a lot of ways, it's already being very badly done in our country. Okay? One of the ironies of my life is that the last book that I read by Kevin was The Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism. So I read that Politically Incorrect Guide to Socialism, and then I went to be a reporter in the Virgin Islands, which is socialist. It's completely socialist. Okay, it's a microcosm of socialist modes of handling resources that is within our borders, that is operating under the, the imperial umbrella of the United States federal government. Everything is run by the government in the islands. The ports, the beaches, everything is owned by the government. The university, the hospital. There is this giant and corrupt network of this. It's over government, okay? There's entity of the power company, okay? The sewage and waste company, all public utilities, everything owned by the government, except for those things that actually make money. And that's where you have this giant inflated, so that what you have going on is an incredibly powerful capitalist system that actually is divorced from the socialist structure, and shit don't work right, okay? If you wanted to, you could make the case this is a perfect example of why socialism in America is a bad idea, because shit don't work right there, okay? It is god-awful. Trying to live there is, in some ways, it's much similar to Latin America and to some of the states below Mexico, okay? But the problem isn't that that's not pure socialism. The problem is that it's disjointed. So what you have is like an overdeveloped, it's like a pygmy system of government. It's like got a crippled, like one half of the body is like shrunken and crippled, and the other half is overdeveloped, okay? And that would be the capitalism, that would be the tourism. You have these fucking insane relationships between corporations. For example, the Marriott. Okay, the Marriott was an EDC beneficiary. Oh my God. So the socialist government would continually have this like arm wrenching, like wrench as many subsidies and benefits out of the fucking weakened, socialist, corrupt, backward ass, patron job, socialist structure as they could. And you have a situation where a corporation as large as the Marriott Corporation, which merged with Starwood to become like I don't even know how many billions of dollars they're worth. I don't remember. Okay. But like one of the most powerful and rich corporations on earth, with a hotel that's been there for 35 years, is still getting EDC benefits. Handouts, economic development handouts, excuses from taxes. And that's what he's talking about, okay? So Tucker Carlson's take on capitalism is exactly the take, in some ways, that Chris Hedges and I share, okay? We just disagree on the potential for socialism. And the way that I feel about it is, if you're gonna vote about what is going on in your time, okay? This is why it's mind-blowing to me. The issues about sexual politics, like all these men wanting to talk about things like the court system. You think the court system, the domestic violence court system is unfortunately like biased towards women, but this has to do with like what happens when you file for custody and how your fucking divorce and alimony pays off. I don't really see how that rises to the level of political concern for the rest of us. That sounds like some personal bullshit that you have spun into a political grievance, instead of looking at things like long-term economic stagnation, the trade deals, the intricacies of that, economic development patterns, climate, anything that we actually, like, people in Congress, like, actually need to be paying attention to. These alt-right fucking douches are so thinking and out of their dicks. I'm sorry, but like, you got a problem getting laid and that's political? You got a problem? No. But Tucker Carlson explains this very well in a sense. Because again, he's talking about how economics have impacted marriage and relationships between men and women. And to me, it was pretty illuminating and spiriting. You know, because on the one hand, I'm like, fuck yeah, Amy Schumer. And then I watch Tucker Carlson, I'm like, fuck yeah. And that's not a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. Okay? Because this shit is the truth. I loved this monologue until it got to the point where it was like, now let's shit on socialists. Because socialism can be good, it can be done good, it can be done really badly. Just like capitalism. Capitalism is being done really badly. And socialism is a middle ground between full bore communism and full bore capitalism. And the final takeaway that I'll stop ranting now, because I know I'm ranting, because that's like another, it's not even a symptom. Actually, it's not. I can't even claim it to be a symptom. It's just, I've always ranted. Okay. The defense of capitalism in and of itself, for its own sake, opens the door to some of the most vile abuses of power and privilege. It opens the door to social Darwinism. It opens the door to hatred, discrimination, and ultimately predatory behavior. And that's exactly what I guess my point about my ex-husband is. When I married him, when I envisioned him becoming famous, this is what I envisioned. Because I didn't anticipate in my young, naive, 20-year-old, love-struck self, I didn't anticipate that he would just completely like chuck all of his Christian values in favor of sucking the dicks of really rich people in order to get like famous. And that's what happened. I felt like again and again his pieces would become really, really bizarre and illogical, but the common theme is that he manages to kiss the asses of people like Scott Pruitt and Mitt Romney enough that people find him like useful and keep him around. And then he got like he started to get an ego trip out of seeing how far he could take things. And so that's why you get comments like women who have abortions should be hanged, because that proves that you're a fucking moral crusader. Like, if you're willing to say people should be killed over something, well then, by God, people should take you seriously, right? No. That doesn't, having this, like, she should be killed. I can't believe he didn't kill her. Like, respect for human life is the fundamental basis for our legal system, fuckers, okay? No. And furthermore, just deciding that you can say things like, I think these people deserve to die for the attention that it gets you, makes me think that I don't know who I married, and no one knows. No one does. Basically, I think my ex-husband, raises for me, because I have such doubt and I have such like a disdain for the intellectual and unscientific like paradigm of psychology to begin with. I don't know if narcissistic personality is a real thing. The way that like baldness is a real thing, or erectile dysfunction, or morbid obesity is a real thing. But it seemed to me that if it could be acquired, that was what was going on with Kevin. Okay? And another thing that got entirely overlooked in all of the reaction about all of this bullshit was that in the piece I was really, really going out of my way to make it clear to everyone that Kevin and I were both the victims of childhood trauma and abuse, and we both grew up in households where domestic violence was a common pattern of behavior. Wife beating went on a lot. Our mothers, our mother figures were humiliated. They were beaten, sexually humiliated and beaten by powerful men. So the heartbreak that I experienced was in reading commentary where neither one of us were really given any, it was like, oh my God, that I was attempting to supply cause and effect. That's what I was attempting to do. I did it badly, apparently. Maybe that was the fault of the ramblingness of the letter. But if I had to do anything, maybe I would go back and I would foreground that and I would make it more of a lead. I would put it closer to the lead. That's about the only thing that I have to say in terms of regret. But if you fucking people who want to weigh in on all this think that you can escape accountability, I mean, you can't escape accountability. If you want to go off the rails on me about how I'm batshit crazy, you might well investigate the facts. And the truth is that I did grow up traumatized by domestic violence. It's a horrible thing. I don't wish it on any of you. I would rather that not be a part of my biography. I mean, dear fucking God, what has happened to people? Where is the conscience in all of this? You know, do you think, I guess this is why the people ultimately, Luke Ford and Kevin Michael Grace, I mean, I did not even know. I mean, I was like, wow, okay, look who shows up. Do you think that anyone with the kind of clout and clarity like Tucker Carlson is gonna really take me down for saying the shit I'm saying? Because the truth is I went out of my way to be transparent, okay? And you can think whatever you want to think about me personally, but it doesn't have anything to do with politics. Outside of the fact that we shouldn't condone this kind of hatred of women. It is not okay to threaten to kill someone. It is not okay to threaten a woman's life because she's leaving you. It is not okay to threaten a woman's life because she's had an abortion. It is not okay to threaten the life of someone who provides a woman with an abortion. It is not okay to make women who don't want to have children that they don't want to have. It's not okay, and it's still legal. As fast and as hard as these fuckers are working to take it away, and this is the thing about Trump, there's two things going on here. There's two very different things going on here. Two very different camps of scary have collided. The theocrats and the fascists. The fascists have no values. They are nihilists. The theocrats have values that are like straight up patriarchy, like I own you, okay? Kevin told me that. Like, Kevin literally would say shit like that. I own this ass. Oh, I own it. Okay, whatever. No, you don't. And according to our legal system, no. So I just am just making this as a kind of a plea for us to come back to the facts, folks. Come the fuck back to the facts. But as far as whether or not I'm mentally ill, I really can't answer that. I mean, I really literally can't. So don't ask me, because it's going to piss me off. Because you've either already decided, or there's no way I can tell you. If I say, no, I'm not crazy, then people who don't want to listen to me can say, crazy people don't know it. If I say, yes, yeah, I'm crazy. I've been hospitalized. I've been mismedicated. That's another thing I should talk about. Corruption of the psychiatric industry was a major part of why I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. When I was 16 and I was seeking to get away from my family and I was seeking help for the absolute god-awful depression that the abuse had caused, I was put on Prozac, which stimulated me to become manic, because that's what it did. It was whoa. It was not the medication for me. And to this day, you know, I have an uncle who still makes fun of me for shit I said when I was jacked up on Prozac when I was 16. It was awful, okay? I went back to school, and for 2 years, I was like, it was hard to make friends because I was the girl who had been in the hospital, and oh my God, you know. So there's no way for me to out-accomplish it. There's nothing that I can achieve in life that will protect me from the stigma. There's nothing I can do about it. You won. You got me. You got me. You know, I'm going to tell you a story, something that happened when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I was an AP English student. And I decided to write my senior thesis, my senior year. We had a big research paper. And I chose James Joyce's Ulysses, which was like, I don't know, 1,500 pages long. And that was going to be the book that I wrote my research paper about. So when I chose it, because it was so long, I didn't have anything to say by the time we were expected to turn in a rough draft. I really hadn't even finished it, much less the criticism that I needed to. And I panicked, and I would just like write some bull crap. And one day I was staying late after school, and I was leaving the journalism lab, and I was in the hallway, and I overheard my senior English teacher talking to my junior English teacher. And Miss Duncan was saying to Miss LaFont, I don't know what's happening to her. I really thought she was behind, you know, all this was behind her, but she appears to be having a lapse, and I'm really concerned about her mental health. Like, the two of them were standing there debating what to do about the prospect of me being manic again, okay? Because my writing wasn't as good as it had been. It was kind of purple prosy, and I was just like, so I was manic, okay? And I do this from time to time. I write manic. It doesn't come out well. It's really a hazard. But I wouldn't exactly say that that's a reason to take medication for the rest of my life and adopt a label that doesn't really apply, okay? So the two of them, I'm hearing this bullshit, and I'm like really hurt by it, and my feelings are hurt. Then later, I actually did complete my paper, and it was given an A, and the senior English teacher said that I could probably publish it in some literary criticism journal. And it didn't really do anything to mitigate the humiliation of having overheard two grown adults whom I whose opinions I really valued, talk about whether or not I was batshit crazy. This is going to happen to me again and again and again. People are going to watch this video, and it's going to get reaction, and it's going to happen again and again and again. And the option is what? Stop picking at it. If it hurts, don't do it. Don't write, don't achieve anything, don't put yourself out there. Don't let people, you know, what is my option here? And that's what I'm talking about. It's a paradox. I am not a genius, okay? But I'm pretty good at what I turn my hand to, and pretty good at, you know, these intellectual problems that I'm able to approach creatively. I'm pretty good at approaching them creatively. Part of the problem, part of the conflict here between myself and my ex-husband, and there is a conflict. There are a lot of conflicts. But fundamentally, one of the reasons why the letter was so bizarre to so many people is what I call intellectual encampment syndrome. Intellectual encampment syndrome. What do I mean by that? I refuse to stay in my lane. Nope, not gonna do it. Kevin is a pundit. Pundits write from persona. There are numerous examples that I could give you, and also interpersonal, graphic, intimate details that I won't give you because I refuse to let this make me stoop to this level of, I just refuse to go there, okay? But when you write from persona, as opposed to what a creative writer does is the opposite end of the spectrum, okay? So this is why when poets came out, like, you know, Anne Sexton, Sylvia Plath, and were accused of being too personal, too confessional, and stimulated this whole debate, that's because they were really taking down writers who, in a sense, were writing from persona, okay? And being transparent and being vulnerable, while you'll never really escape persona, it's unavoidable, but there's many a creative writer, there's many a memoirist who holds themselves to a pretty stringent standard of not lying, okay? And to the extent that maybe life is so hard sometimes, maybe life is so difficult, the part of having a personality and an ego at all is that you have to lie to yourself sometimes. But dear God, try not to let it sprawl. Dear God, try not to write so much from a persona that you end up talking about, like, I mean, I've seen things, like, I can't read his work because I see things and I'm like, I just know how much omission there is. I know how much omission there is. I know that there are things that I just, oh my God. So, and also just things that don't make any sense. But it's okay because it's a persona. It's a persona, right? And then you have, you know, at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have people who are academics who write in an academic style where subjectivity is not allowed at all. So they're a bit more they're more honest and they're more pure in the sense that they can't lie from omission because there isn't this presumption of a subjectivity at all. Okay? So either like write academic stuff or write creative stuff. But what I have an issue with is this cheap political writing. And then you have this secondary issue, which is literary encampment syndrome, which says that you're one or the other, right? And this is a phenomenon of modern marketing and a sort of like change in our intellectual production standards, okay? So One of the reasons why the letter was so weird, I think, is that I spent years as a journalist writing just the facts and having to stick to the strict standards of newspapers where I wasn't even allowed to have, subjectivity, and it was just quote, attribution, fact, everything rigorously checked and analyzed, and it was incredibly liberating. And I loved writing like that. I loved being a crime reporter. Do you know why? In most papers, it's the shit beat. It's the rookie shit beat. It's like cleaning the toilet before you get to become, something else. You gotta, you prove yourself. No, I loved it. I did not want to cover politics. I did not want to cover City Hall because on my beat, stuff actually happened, okay? People got beat. Yeah, it was ugly and it was base and it was brutal and it was like, ugh. But shit was going on. It wasn't just, what did this person say about what this person said in this meeting? And do you think that this is, it wasn't endless freaking this react cycle, like this, oh my God. And is this I was like, no, there's this hard and fast and I can deal with it, crime stuff. Shit happens, there's a charge. Maybe someone died today. I can deal with it. It's a fact. And I quit voting. Okay, that's when I quit voting. Because I could see that the world was a really fast-paced, complex, riveting, violent, dark, chaotic place. And I felt free. I felt freer. I didn't feel like I was going to take all that on with people I didn't know and couldn't trust. And I stopped voting because I also didn't want to get attached to a political mindset that might impact the way that I investigated things that I was investigating as a reporter. Truthfully, honestly, I haven't trusted myself to vote because some of the politicians that I've met face to face were so wrong, okay, that I was like, if I don't know a person, I'm not voting for them. And that's really how I felt. So I quit voting. It doesn't mean that I quit holding opinions about justice. It doesn't mean that I quit taking in information. It doesn't mean that I quit educating myself, particularly with respect to economics. But I was free as a reporter. No subjectivity. And when that ended, I returned to subjectivity as a means of dealing with my life. And I started publishing things that were personal. And I started letting it all out because I didn't have anymore. I didn't have to protect myself anymore. So in literary journals, I talked about being mentally ill. I talked about what happened to me as a child. Was it cathartic? Did it make it go away? No, but what I hoped was that somebody else might get something out of it. Because believe it or not, I'm not just in it for me. I'm in it for you too. If you just ever goddamn get off Twitter and develop the attention span to read something longer than 140 characters. I mean, god damn, people. Your faulty attention span is not my fault. I didn't do that to you. So anyway, there's academic writers. They're pure in the sense that unless they're really trying to work an agenda, they don't have subjectivity. So they don't have the capacity to lie by omission. And then there's creative writers who go too far in the other direction, maybe, and in detailing their lives, end up being trapped by a persona they don't want to have. And maybe that's why a lot of them, like I talked about in my letter, hypocrisy is something you're going to have to deal with because your version of the truth comes from an imperfect vessel, which is yourself. Okay? So think a lot of writers end up killing themselves because they just expect writing to save them from the internal conflict, and it can't. It's not, because it's not for you, it's for other people. But pundits, to me, this is the worst of both. This is the worst of the worlds of writers, you know. So am I jealous of my ex-husband? Fuck yeah. I'm jealous of the fact that he's able to make a living. I'm jealous of the fact that he is credited with being this blazing intellect, and he's not. But this jealousy was really, really late in coming. The jealousy of his professional success was late in coming because actually internally I had such a disdain for the genre that he was working in anyway, and I didn't think he would end up in it. I really hoped that he would end up as a novelist or a screenwriter or someone, but he doesn't want to because he doesn't want to because he's so entranced with his own persona. So there you go. Your life, you get what you want. You ultimately get what you want and what you direct yourself to. And the last thing I'm going to say is that the defense of capitalism, in and of itself for its own sake, is a morally degrading way of being, and you shouldn't do it. Okay, it's evil, it's wrong. It opens the door for evil, wrong behavior. It's social Darwinism, and it has no intellectual validity whatsoever. So, is money the root of all evil? No. Is love of money the root of all evil? Maybe. But love of capitalism is close to being the root of a lot of the social problems that we have. And my ex-husband does not deserve his career anymore. And that's how I feel, and that's why I published the letter. So, peace out.